It was an extraordinary exchange by Donald Trump and JD Vance with President Zelensky of Ukraine that broke yesterday morning in Australia. What did you make of it?
Look, it was. I sat down and I watched the full 53 minutes of it. It was a very heated exchange towards the end. I think there's two things I want to make clear. Number one is that Australia stands with Ukraine. We've always stood with Ukraine since Russia's illegal, immoral and unjustified invasion of Ukraine in February 22. That's why we provided diplomatic, political, military and humanitarian aid to the Ukrainians. And we want to see Ukrainian sovereignty upheld in any peace settlement. So that's our position. But I think what we saw yesterday in the Oval Office is a very different US approach to security and trade. I think President Trump is rebalancing the terms of trade and security, and that has implications for Australia. We need to demonstrate a strong hand. President Trump studies your cards very closely, and I think he wants to know that his allies have a strong hand. What does a strong hand look like? Well, I think that means investing in our Defence Force. And that's why today's announcement of the F-35s, which has been in the works for many months, sends a strong signal, not just to the region, but also to a critical partner like the US, that we're not a free rider, we're actually a heavy lifter, and we're going to invest to take care of our own security, not be dependent upon the United States all the time.
Well, you're right that he talks about cards, but President Trump and the Vice President were telling President Zelensky he wasn't grateful enough for America's support and that his country would have been overtaken quickly without US military support. Is that true in your view?
Look, we supported Ukraine with Bushmasters. We urged the government to commit our retiring Abrams tanks, 49 of them. They won't be given until later this year, which is a disgrace in my view. They should have been given to the Ukrainians a long time ago. That's why we've supported Ukraine, because they needed our help. But they demonstrated they could stand on their own 2 feet. But of course, this is a war of attrition, and they've needed a lot of military, material and humanitarian aid, which the Australian government has been happy to give it, first on the coalition and then Labor, and we've been bipartisan on that approach.
Well, do you believe President Zelensky
President Zelensky's fighting for his country? He's fighting for his country. I'm not going to comment on an exchange between President Trump and President Zelensky. Of course, we support Ukraine. Of course, we have supported them literally with military and material aid over the years. There's a lot to play out still, and we just hope we can get some sort of peace settlement that upholds Ukrainian sovereignty in the process.
Because this is an extremely tricky foreign policy, no matter whether you win or Anthony Albanese does, isn't it? Where are we at as a country if we have to disagree with the US administration on this and yet still have an alliance, still have AUKUS and try to prevent tariffs on our country?
Well, that's right. Like I said, President Trump is rebalancing the terms of trade and security, and we need to have a strong hand. And we've got a very passive Prime Minister. We saw that on full display last week, where he was flustered, he wasn't across his brief. He should have gone to President Trump's inauguration. He should have been there to build that relationship, and we have to demonstrate that we have a strong hand. Andrew, if you watched that video as well, you saw President Trump talk a lot about raw earths, or I think he meant rare earths. We have an abundance of rare earths. We have 4% of the world's reserves. We actually have a very strong hand. We have a strong hand when it comes to rare earths, and we also have a strong hand with our alliance with the United States, with the strategic depth that we've provided for many years now. But the signal is very clear from the Trump White House. Don't be a free rider, be a heavy lifter, invest in your own security, invest in the Defence Force, and that's what we're doing today by announcing the 4th Squadron of F-35 Joint Strike Fighters.
Just on this Chinese live firing incidents, the government says the Chinese are complying with international law, that Australia does all sorts of exercises in the South China Sea. Do you see any equivalence there?
No, I don't see any equivalence. If we have done live fire, my understanding is it's always been deconflicted, it's been coordinated, and it's been very controlled, always part of a larger multilateral exercise. Nowhere near Chinese waters and no disruption to Chinese commercial flight path. There is no equivalence here, and that's the key point. The Prime Minister, again, given his very passive approach and weak approach to leadership, was at pains to explain last week's incident away as being within the bounds of international law. That totally misses the point. It totally misses the point. It was an overt signal of military strength from the Chinese government, and it's a reminder to Australians that we can't take anything for granted. We are geographically isolated. We have very vulnerable lines of trade and communication. They need to be protected. The only way you can do that is by investing in your Defence Force, and that's why the Joint Strike Fighter, or the F-35, is an excellent platform for maritime strike, and we're investing in that for the future. We're building on an already strong Air Force with further capability.
Mr Hastie, it sounds like there is a budget now in May election, just from my report and Jim Chalmers' comments about the budget. What do you think that says about the political contest at the moment, just briefly?
I think they're looking for an answer. I think the Albanese government is casting around for an answer because they're in trouble, and they're hoping that with more runway they can land this plane. But I've got to be honest, people out here are doing it tough. We've had 4,000 hospitality businesses go under. We've had 27,000 small businesses go under Labor. Our Defence Force is going backwards. Families are doing it really tough. Gas prices, electricity prices, grocery prices, insurance premiums, school fees, everything is up. And this is because of Labor's homegrown inflation. And this will be a referendum on Labor's ability to manage the cost of living crisis that is impacting all Australians.
All right, briefly, because I'm out of time. WA election this weekend. What sort of showing can we expect from the Liberals? Because Roger Cook's the hot favourite. What would you say to WA voters?
I know that our team has been working very, very hard, and I'm confident that we will acquit ourselves well. You never say never. We could have a massive swing here. Of course, the bookies are all backing Roger Cook, and we have a long way to go, only holding a couple of seats in the lower house in WA. But I'm confident that the wheel is turning, and we are working hard to deliver for the Western Australian people. So watch that space closely. There are some good people who are entering the Parliament, and I'm confident that we'll give ourselves a good showing.
Andrew Hastie, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Andrew.